Let's go here. Let me pull this up. If nothing else, I'll pull it up on my phone so I can see the chat. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? And I'm sure you, like me, have had to become a very creative problem solver this last school year in ways that I never thought possible, which is kind of what motivated me to talk about this. Well, I'm also majoring in graphic design, getting I can't even talk, an MFA in visual communications, which is basically graphic design and user experience. So it's opened my eyes to a lot of things that I needed to improve on. And then the pandemic hit. Let's see which comes up first, my phone or the computer. The computer beat my phone. So let me pull up the Meet over there so I can see your chat, because I really hate to miss questions. So give me 1 second, and I do apologize, because I know I'm annoyed. If I go into presentation and the presenter's not ready, I'm like, are you kidding me? You're supposed to be the tech guru, and you're doing this? There we go. Okay, so let's see. We've got about 3 minutes before it's supposed to be time, so make sure everybody's here as this computer boots up. And if you hear noise, it's the camp kids. I apologize again for that. They're about to go to lunch, so we won't hear them very long. They're hungry. 1 second. And this is UX Design for Teachers, and I am going to be, it's more of a discussion about what UX is and how you can apply it to your classes and your content, rather than specifically, this is how you design. At the end of this, my contact information, which is, of course, Cowden at Garland ISD, I am going to have that on the last slide, too, if you need it. Because if you ever have any questions, design related, or does this work, or how can I improve this, I would love to help you. One of the things I'm working on as part of my master's program is how to help teachers improve their content delivery with design. So this computer is taking forever to come up. And I stopped on my phone because the computer was starting, and it's like, really? Which one? One of those days. Let me pull it up. And it's making me sign. Let's see. One way or the other, I'm going to get in there. We are the 11:45 session. Let me scroll down. Yeah, I'm impressed because my phone's getting there faster. There I am. Open and meet. I have to talk myself through it. I mean, mute my mic here so that we don't have to hear that. And kill the volume on my phone. And I didn't kill the volume on my phone. So let me do that. Because I'm hearing myself and I don't want an echo. Mute. Audio off. There we go. How to find the right setting. Let me pull up the chat over here because I don't want to lose you guys. And we have got 1 minute till 11 o'clock. Let me find the chat. It's like now I'm on a whole other device. And I imagine you guys have the same kind of thing. I never do this on my phone. And let's see. Let me see, because it puts me as a call. I know, I'm technically clumsy. All right, so it is time. So hopefully I have the right, there we go. I'm seeing people joining. Okay, I think I have the right chat pulled up. It's just confusing me because it says in-call messages instead of chat. And I never do this on my phone. So hopefully I've got everything. So let's get rolling. And if not, feel free to unmute and holler at me if I'm missing something. So, because it's 11 o'clock and I want to be mindful of your time. I apologize that I wasn't more coordinated at the beginning. I am Danie Cowden. I teach in the PTech program here at Saxe High School. I teach web design dual credit, graphic design dual credit, and I'm teaching this year the just the Gen Pop video game design, video game programming rather, class. I do have a background in design and photography. My major was I have a BFA in photography, and I am working on an MFA in visual communication and UX design. And what led me, as I was saying at the beginning, to talk about this was that I noticed during the pandemic, I kept hearing from teachers, the kids can't find my stuff. The kids can't find my stuff. They can't navigate my Canvas page. They can't do this. And I looked at their page and I'm like, well, it's not just the kids. Part of it is how we're delivering our content. We're not considering the end user. And that is our students and what they need. So today we're going to look at some of the principles of UX design and what UX design is and how we can apply those. So what this talk is all about is about applying user experience design concepts when developing your courses and classroom content. There are several schools of thought on UX design. There is no right or wrong on what they're called, but there's some main tenets about finding our pain points and things like that we're going to talk about. What we're not doing today in this session is learning how to create graphics, designing your course specifically, or how to use software. I'm not getting into any of that. I wanted to talk about theories. So I do understand if you were looking for tutorials, that was not what I was doing. I understand if you want to go find tutorials. But if you're here and you want to learn about UX, stick with us. I just wanted to make sure up front, because normally my classes are direct teach tutorials, and this one is a little bit different. So who this talk is for: anyone who wants to improve the experience students have learning in their classroom. And really, I need to expand this because administrators can benefit from UX design, especially when delivering content to teachers and school-wide. And you could even apply UX concepts to everything you do around your school, because the user experience involves everything, not just what's on the screen or what's on the paper. So again, I keep saying UX design. If you really don't know what UX is, user experience is all about how the user interacts with your content. All right, I need to slow myself down. I realized I was talking really fast for y'all. When you go use a website, someone has already gone in and they've researched the users. They've looked at all these different parts of what their users want, all that market research, and they have looked at what their users need to get out of it. They figured out the kind of environment the users will be accessing that content from. Are they going to mostly be using mobile? Are they mostly going to be using websites? Or are they going to be getting on in a public space or their own device or at home? All of those things are considered before they get to that website, even before you open the screen. When you go to someplace like Disney World, they do the same thing. If you've ever been to Disney, Disney is amazing with UX design, because everything from the moment you enter the park is considered. How the cast members address you. When you go into the queue of a line that doesn't feel like a line, it, is this elaborately themed world that you step into with some of the rides. When you go into a store, how you buy merchandise, everything. And Disney is actually evolving their UX beyond what a lot of people are, because they've even got their magic bands, which are now being phased out in favor of phones, so people don't have another thing to keep up with, all in an effort to give the best user experience possible that's seamless. And my mission is to help teachers learn how to take these concepts that they're using in marketing and advertising and commerce and apply them to their classroom. Because if we do that, and there are things, and you're going to hear them, and you're going to be like, oh, well, I sort of already do that, probably. If we do that, we will improve everything for our students. We'll improve how they access our content, how well they can find things, how relevant they feel our class is. I'm going to click this computer on real quick too and see if I can switch from my phone while I'm talking. And we'll get there. So let's get rolling. So good course UX design. Make sure that our content, whatever we give our students, and when I say content, I am talking about everything related to our course, not just digital, but print, even as far as how they interact with things in our classroom. Really, UX is everything. I know Icon focuses on digital, and that's a big portion of what we do now because of the pandemic and Canvas and all that. So, but it makes sure the content is relevant to the user. And that probably sounds familiar to you because we're always making sure our classroom content is relevant. And it keeps the unique needs of the user in mind. And yes, I'm talking about like accommodations there, but beyond that, accommodations and modifications, we need to go beyond just those and consider that student who may not have any accommodations or anything, but they still need something from us. They have unique needs. We have a lot of populations within our schools that are getting overlooked because they don't fit into one of these boxes that is already got something for them. So, and one way we can consider about UX design and how we can keep it relevant to the user and to keep the unique needs of the user in mind is to create personas. Now, before I get into this, I am not suggesting you go create a persona for every one of your students. User personas are representations of your users, or in this case, your students. And it's where you compile all that research that you've done. Goals, frustrations, which are also sometimes called pain points, behavior, demographic information, all of that is in what they put in the personas. Let me sign into this one because I cannot see the chat. So I don't know if you're saying anything to me. It's all in there.
No questions here.
No questions? Okay, if y'all just holler at me because I'm like, I've got 3 devices going now. It's crazy. So the personas. Companies use them, and you'll see them. If you Google user personas, you'll find a bunch of them. And they will have the picture, and they'll tell you all these things about the person. So I did an example of what I would do, and I would not do this with student names. I would do this with generalities. And here's an example where I've talked about Jay, who's a high school junior, and she's my example student. This is not a real student, but it's just an example of someone in my classes that she maintains an A average and is a band, currently focusing on applying to art schools. I talk about her demographics, and that is one of the overlooked areas I'll get to in a minute. Her behaviors. Things that we usually consider when we're teaching, right? We usually think about what they want to do as we get to know them and we build those relationships and things like that. How they act in classroom. And then we look at their frustrations, which are things that not their accommodations and modifications. But when we see a student and we know, well, this one's going to get frustrated if they have to read for a long time. Or this one has anxiety about their workload. Things like that to consider. And then the content needs, which is where I categorize those accommodations and modifications. And some of them are not ones that are listed on their IEP. You know, like creative freedom and assignments. If I can give that for this person and I know that's going to motivate them, I'm going to try to include it in the content. And I consider the demographics, which is something that a lot of people don't. They don't. And they try to say, I treat every student the same. We can't. We have to acknowledge that all of our students come from different backgrounds and they bring something different in there. And if we can help them and understand where they grew up and where they're coming from and what they've gone through, it's going to help you be a better teacher. Including that in the personas, for me, helps me how I deliver content, because I know that if this person grew up in a single parent household, they might not have had an adult who could spend a lot of time reading with them. So they may need more support there. If they grew up in a household with 2 parents who both worked, they may be in the same situation. If they grew up and they had a mom at home or a dad at home or a grandma at home that was able to read to them and work with them, their reading level might be much higher. If I don't consider that when I'm developing my content, I'm leaving out a whole chunk of students. And I know that these are things that most of us already know. I'm hoping that this is not something that sounds foreign to teachers, that this is like, oh, well, this is what we're supposed to be doing anyway. But you take this idea that we know when we're building our individual lesson, and we need to be applying it to how we build our Canvas pages. We need to apply it to how we build our worksheets, our handouts, everything we give our students. We need to apply. Yay, I have chat. I saw that one. Okay, I'm relaxing now because I've been freaking out because of the chat. But we need to acknowledge where they're coming from. We need to look at their content needs. We need to look at their frustrations and their behaviors. And we need to see how we can do that, how we can apply that to everything we do, not just the assignment itself. It's got to extend. The biggest thing I saw when teachers would bring me their Canvas page and they're like, because I was a Canvas champ on my campus, and when they would bring me their Canvas page and they're like, my students say they can't find things, but it's right here. And I'm going to admit, and if I offend anybody, I'm sorry, but inside I would cringe because I'm looking at their page and I'm like, your students can't find it because your design is preventing them from finding it. You're not considering where they are when you're presenting it. So, and I know that that may sound harsh. I'm trying not to call anybody's baby ugly on their Canvas page, but we were thrown into this world. Teachers were thrown into this role of being web designers all of a sudden. And you were taught how to put things into Canvas, but nobody ever was able, because we were so busy, we didn't get to stop and learn about how to actually make Canvas or Google Docs or Google Slides truly accessible for everyone. How to consider all of those things for their user experience and make it so they can follow the page. So, do I have any? I do not, but I can get you one. I actually did not include one on here because I wasn't talking specifically about Canvas, but I can definitely get you one. I will tell you what a great course page, a homepage would need. And that is obviously the title of the course at the top, the teacher's contact information at the top. You want it to be minimal because Canvas has everything built in. It's got the modules there. The more important thing, which I'm going to get to, is how we organize it in Canvas. But the biggest thing I saw was homepages with just too much information. It was information overload or unclear navigation, or navigation kids had to scroll too far for and they didn't need to scroll. You know, they would just stop. Or the forgetting that many students, especially at the high school level, access Canvas only on their phones. They want to avoid the computers like the plague, which kills me because I teach in a computer lab. But those things, those are the ways people go wrong. The best pages are the ones that are clean, minimal, and have good visual hierarchy. And we're actually going to be talking about that part. So let me go ahead. Are there any questions about what a persona is? I don't see any. Okay. It's pretty straightforward, and it's a lot like taking what the IEP is. And I will say, I create these, and they're not about specific students. I take a cue from the company that invented the Good Grips tools, OXO. There's a really great documentary called Objectified where they talk about how they developed it. And they looked at the people who had the most trouble with the tools and the people who had the least trouble with the tools. And they tried to make sure first it worked for both of them. Generalizing the personas? Yes. If I try to go make one for 150 students, I'm going to go crazy. But generalizing, it's not a specific student. I'm looking at the ones, when I look, I usually do about 5 for a class at the beginning of the year. I look at the students who are the highest performing, who often get forgotten. What can I do to make my content a good experience for them? I look at the lowest performing, and then I'll pull a few in the middle, because I don't want to leave out the ones in the middle. I mean, there's this theory. I do take my cue from OXO, where I look at the both ends first. And that gives me a guide for what I need to do for the ones in the middle. And generally, I develop one set of content for everybody. So I don't have to go in and individually modify. I'm covering almost all my modifications and accommodations. I just go in for those few students who don't fit any of the standards. For me, it makes my life a little easier, but more importantly, it makes my course a better experience for my students because they don't feel as lost when they're trying to navigate through my content. So let's look at the next one. After we look at the unique needs of the user and the relevance, which relevance is something, again, we all have unique needs. We know our students, no two are different. We have to try to keep everything consistent across all digital and print forms. Let me see. Consistency is huge in helping our students feel comfortable, feel safe, feel like they know what they're looking at. And it's something that's overlooked. We don't think about it. We're like, oh, I'm just going to throw together this Google Doc, or I'm going to throw together this slideshow. I'm going to use this template. Oh, well, I used this template last week. Let's use a new template. Keeping everything consistent will help them. They'll know what to expect. It'll make it easier for them to find things. Even something as simple as using the same fonts across everything, the same colors, the same format. If you are in a STAR-tested class, follow the STAR test format for your test. When you give summative assessments, follow the STAR test pattern, lay it out like they do. So when the students get to the STAR test, it looks the same. It's not some big mystery. It's going to look like what they're used to. If you use a textbook, and I've seen this too, teachers who use a textbook and they follow a textbook, but then they were breaking down their Canvas page by date. So the kids don't know when their teacher's like, okay, go finish, the assignment on causes of the American Revolution. And they go look, and social studies teachers don't say, they would never do that, please. I teach design, I'm sorry. But when you tell them to go look up one thing, but then your content on your Canvas page is listed by date, they don't know where to look. They can't compare the book that you're using to what's on the page. So do consider that you need to keep those things consistent. You don't want to lose them. And I know a lot of us have gotten away from textbooks, but sometimes, especially for core teachers, you still got to pull them out once in a while. Just remember that if you're using one, everything else you reference about that should be referred to the same way for consistency. If you lay out, if your history and you lay out one way, keep it that way. I tend to go by topic, and I feel that that's more easily navigable for students than by date. There's a debate about this right now, which is better. My husband and I actually got into it. He's also a teacher who teaches design at another high school. And we got into a heated debate about which one was better, by date or by topic. When you're organizing, like say on the front of your Canvas page, if you want to put a little table of contents and you're doing that, or you create a table of contents in a Google slideshow where you're keeping running notes or something like that. And we came to the consensus between us that your content is going to dictate which one is better, because math, I could see going better by date, but like history or biology might go better by content header, by descriptive of the unit. It's up to you which way it works. Just keep it consistent. If you don't, they're going to get lost. So the next part that flows into that is that it should be intuitive or easy to follow. I'm going to ask, and you can answer or not in the chat, how many thought that got frustrated because their students would come to them saying they couldn't find something on their Canvas page, and you're like, it's right there. Why can't you find it? Did anybody ever have that feeling? We think they should know, right? Story of your school year. Yes, I'm with you. And I'm a designer, and so mine should have been flawlessly laser. And I'm like, why are they not finding it? And then I realized they're not thinking like me. Yes, it's available in 4 different ways. Can I ask you this? How often did you explicitly teach what they were supposed to do? How much time did you spend explicitly teaching them exactly how to follow? Go to the next one. I went too far. Anyway, you did a complete day just at the beginning? At the beginning of the year only. Depending on the age, you feel like you did a lot several times throughout the year? Okay, cool. I'm awesome to hear that because I've heard a lot where teachers aren't. It's like, depending on the grade level, you have to teach it over and over and over again. Yes. Yeah, lacking consistency, original layout. You have to consider it is one of those things. I equated it to our students using Canvas, like after long breaks. Yes. And I don't know what grade level you're teaching, but I remember when I was teaching elementary school and I had to reteach everything when they came back from Christmas break, because it's the same thing analogy I'm fixing to use. They're like little puppies, and you have to retrain them or they're going to pee all over the rug. I say that to my freshmen too, and they hate it. I'm like, but it's true. Yes. I have 9th grade dual credit for web design, and they were struggling. They were in Blackboard through Dallas College, but they were even struggling with that. And I had to keep reteaching it all the time. So we think that they know, but it's not sticking. If anybody figures out how to make a kid remember what you want them to, that's one I need to add to my talk. Because even if you have the best design and you think it is the easiest to follow, it's simple, it's there, you're going to have to keep reteaching it. That's not all a failure on you. Don't think that. But it needs to be intuitive and easy to follow. And the best way I figured out that, and one of the best ways I say in all my design training, is visual hierarchy. It is the most important thing when you are talking about making something that your students can follow. And what throws a wrench in visual hierarchy is usually color or animations. And I know some love animations, but imagine this. I have this great slideshow, and I want my kids to look at this part that I worked really hard getting these equations on here to teach them how to do this. But then for fun, I put this blinky thing in there. The assignment list is your toolbox. Yes. Yep. I have this blinky animation down there. They're going to get distracted by that blinky animation, and they're not going to look at see just like I got distracted by the chat. I have ADHD, by the way. I seriously do. And so if I go off the rails, I apologize. It happens. I'm trying to be mindful of time also so I don't hold y'all late. But visual hierarchy, whatever is most important on the page, that should be the biggest thing. And then you step down. And I know that when you create a Google slideshow, the templates do this for you a little bit if you get into creating your own templates. But Canvas does like nothing. Their visual hierarchy that's built in is I found it very lacking, what they do. You really have to consider how you're using color there. Keep it minimal to establish good hierarchy. Like I have one color for my headers that are in extra bold, and then everything else is a different color, except for my look, because I wanted you to look at that. Consider keeping that minimal. When you go crazy with the colors, there's no hierarchy. Kids can't follow it. If you go crazy with 5 different fonts on a page, you're going to lose hierarchy. Consider 1, at most 2 fonts to establish good hierarchy. and then go from there. Choose things with like a big font family. There's some really great ones built into Google, and most of them are in Canvas also. Like Roboto. I'm trying to think if they're in Canvas. I know Roboto, Lotto. Those are my two go-tos, are Roboto and Lotto. Lotto is also awesome. It's got a huge font family. That means it's got lots of choices for bolds and italics and all this, because it's all one family. It goes together. But I can also just step down from the bold in a large size to the regular to help establish my hierarchy, so that the kids know that bolded thing, that's the most important thing. Then consider placement of your hierarchy, because we have a tendency as teachers to make every headline bold and large, and there might be one halfway down the page that we make bold and large really huge. They're going to ignore that. They're going to just look right by it. You try to keep your most important topics at the top of whatever you're designing, if you can, or the thing you want them to see first, and then work your way down. Lotto is a font in Google. Lato. If you go to fonts, fonts.google.com, all of those fonts are in there, and they actually offer some great font pairings. If you scroll down to the bottom for the individual fonts, that you can look at to see what you like when you're working in Google. Not all of them work in Canvas. I would definitely keep it simpler fonts here when you're establishing hierarchy. When you get into like the lobster and the curls and the really ornate fonts, or even the script fonts, you're going to start to lose. You can use those for like a headline, but anything else, you're going to lose your hierarchy, and your kids are going to get lost. So let's roll on. Content hierarchy. It's the same idea. Much like good textbooks are divided. We kind of talked about that before. Your digital content has to have some kind of hierarchy. If you're throwing everything into assignments and not using modules in Canvas, you're missing out. Use those modules and divide them up just like you would your textbook, or if you give them a binder. If you used to give them a binder and have it divided in sections, use modules and divide it the same way if you're not already. It will be a big thing, a big help to you. That was great English, wasn't that? Sorry, English teachers. It's been a long 2 weeks with middle schoolers for me. But divide that up into different sections. Without those modules, it's like having a big pile of laundry and trying to find one sock. It's going to take you a while, and they might come out with the wrong sock. I don't know if you experienced the same thing I did, which was students going into the assignments in May and trying to turn in work from January. And I'm like, sweetheart, what is the date on that? It's January. That cycle's closed. Modules can help with that if you're not using them already. If you're using a Google Drive, either to supplement your Canvas, or you rely heavily on Google Drive just to organize everything that you give to your students, organize it the same way. If you're using a textbook in your class, use that as your blueprint, because they pay people good money for the user experience on textbooks. I know there's some out there that are horrid, but most of them are actually pretty good. I know there's the exceptions. So do keep in mind your content hierarchy. You have to establish it. I know that most of us have a scope and sequence, and we go in that order. It's a really good blueprint. If we start getting crazy, though, and we don't organize our content by that, our kids are going to get lost. And again, we talked about this before, explicitly teach. I'll say it again. Year, semester, teach it again, year, semester, cycle, everything. I was doing it this last year, like at least once a week. I ended up explicitly teaching how to follow. And I still had students at the end of the year, it was the end of the semester, who were like, I didn't turn in any work. I'm like, I noticed that, and I've been asking you for it, and I've been calling home. And they're like, well, I didn't know how to find it in Canvas. at the end of the year, and I'm like, I've explicitly taught it every day, every week, every hour. So just keep doing it. You're doing what they need. And I know that it's frustrating. I feel your pain there. So let's move on. Let's see, it's 11:30. I'm trying to keep on track. So good UX. Remember, this is not just about how they access our content. User experience is about everything and how they interact. Basically, how they go through our course. So remember, present authentic learning experiences when you can. I know that sometimes it's very cut and dried, and there's only so much you can do when you're learning, polynomial equations and things. But whenever you can, those relatable, real world, I don't like that term because we're in the real world here, but real world experiences, when you can, bring it back to that for those authentic learning experiences, it's going to help. It's part of UX design, designing those to fit within your content. It's one of the things that tends to be most lacking because we think we don't have time. I will say I spent 4 years teaching at a charter school, middle school, and I was teaching engineering class along with art and music with them and technology. And they sent me to several trainings. So if you're stuck, I've done trainings for PBL for English and for social studies, for math, for science, specifically to writing. I've got a ton of tricks, a ton of great projects. So if you ever need anything on that, I will say reach out because I could spend a whole week just talking about that. There's so many great resources. But if you're doing all this other stuff and you're not giving any kind of authentic learning experiences, your UX design just went down because they're not going to have a good experience in your class. And we all know this, right? Hopefully we know this, but I wanted to make sure it was in there and address it because it is so important. So, and good UX design does not let technology get in the way. I wanted to make sure I address this topic. And it's super important when we are in this digital world because we have this habit, I do it too, of letting the kids sit at the computer and do things that are worksheet replacements, or they are very low in the critical thinking end of the spectrum. They will be really to the point where the kids, they get excited because they're at the computer and then they see what they're doing like, oh, again. I know especially some of you who might teach elementary have probably experienced that. I'm not going to name the site that they don't like, but having run an elementary school computer lab as well, I know where they don't like to go. And it starts to get in the way. The tech, instead of being this great tool that we can use, becomes this obstacle for their learning, and it creates a really bad user experience for that student, for the class. So try to make sure you're not letting all of this Canvas and Google and everything else we're using and all these websites, because I know we're bringing in Desmos and we're bringing in some people bring in Education Galaxy, and we use iStation, we use all these other things. Teachers use all these things they can pull on. Like right now I'm teaching in Scratch for the camp, and we have all these great tools, but we need to remember that they're still just tools, right? They are not what's teaching. They should not be what's teaching. When you get to that point and the kids are glued to a screen, and I know it's been hard during the pandemic because we had so many, that's all we could do. And it's going to be hard to shift out of that for some of us. I know me, it's going to be really hard for me to shift out of my whole completely flipped classroom. But it starts to become where the technology starts to become a barrier. It gets in between us and the students. And we need to try to make sure that doesn't happen. If it's standing in between us, we can't build relationships. We can't find out what's relevant. We can't figure out what we need to do to fill out on that persona to help that student. We can't get to them if it's in the way. So when you're using technology, I'm not saying don't use it. I love technology. I embrace technology. I use technology with my students every day. They're at the computer. But remember to why you're using it. I personally try to make my assignments something that they couldn't do on paper, because I kind of feel like that helps. And I'm going to give an example. I teach a lot of Photoshop. So when I teach it, I try to be very mindful of what they're doing with it and how it applies. Because if I'm just saying, hey, put these photos together, well, they can cut out things on paper and they can create a collage. Will it be Photoshop and digital? No, but they can do the same thing on paper. I try to look at how I can take it further than that. So that I'm not just recreating something that, it's a skill they don't need. Another one that I saw that to be careful of with letting technology get in the way goes the other way. And I saw one of the ed tech gurus talking about Canva. And she's like, have your students start with these templates in Canva, and they can go create their posters and everybody's will look awesome. And I sat down and I started thinking about it. And I started thinking about why. Why use Canva? And it's awesome. I'm not saying Canva is not a great tool. But my hesitation when I thought about it was, well, if I were asking a student to make a poster, we will say about, my brain's shorting out now, about the water cycle. If I want them to make a poster of the water cycle, am I going to hand them a poster that already has fonts and everything selected and doesn't let them make any creative choices and, gives them all these pieces to put it together? If I hand them a blank poster board, or am I just going to hand them a blank piece of paper and some markers and say, go? Which one is going to give them more creativity? And when that's the case, how can we make sure, if we want to give them that creativity that they'd have with that blank poster board and the markers over the template, what do we need to use that'll do that online if we're going to go digital with it? Think about those tools that you're using. Why are you using what you're using? Are you having them recreate something, template after template after template, or create original content? I hope that came out making sense. My head's getting all tripped up. But think about it. We tend to hand them a lot of templates digitally when we want them to do things like that. And the more we can let them create, the more we can let them be independent, the more they're going to engage, the more that it's going to be relevant to them because they're going to put their spin on it. And the better off our life is, because we know that engaged students do their work. I'm not saying that's my end all be all, but we know we need to get them to do the work. And when they're engaged, they work. If they're tuning out because they're just typing the stuff into a template in 2 minutes, they're going to get bored. So that's another way to not let that technology get in the way. There's so many great sites out there that will do half the work for them. We got to be careful of that. All right, I see it's 11:39, so let me wrap this up. So with all of that, I know that was a lot. Don't forget your physical environment, especially with kids coming back in the classroom. That's also a part of their user experience. Everything they see around them. And I am not saying make everything matchy-matchy. That's not the message here. Just keep in mind that everything around them, I'm just going to give a quick example because we're almost done, I promise. I was doing a PD at my old campus. I was sitting in PD. I was a student in that one, not giving it. And it was in another teacher's classroom. And she had all these anchor charts all over the walls. And they were awesome. And they were just, her room was wallpapered with anchor charts. And I could not focus on the content being given to me because I kept getting distracted by all the anchor charts. She'd spent so much time on them all. And they were so beautiful. But they were everywhere. And it was just, I have ADHD and my brain was like, okay, that is so cool how she made those letters. The typography distracted me. So do be aware of that. Things like that. I mean, your whole classroom is a part of their user experience. And if there's ways you can do, I know we can't do anything about our furniture most of the time. We can't do anything about where we are, if we have a window or whatever else, but we can control other things like the general atmosphere. So don't forget that in all of this. that their physical environment really does have an impact as they come back from being remote. It's a huge part of creating a good user experience for your students. And if they're not comfortable, it doesn't matter what digital stuff you put in front of them. They're not going to work. We know this, so just don't forget it. All right. So I know that was a lot, and I kind of started to veer off the reservation there, but I think it's all, hopefully you got something out of it. As you can tell, good UX design is kind of my passion. And if you ever want to talk to me more about it, or you want to talk about design, or you want my tools, or anything like that, do email me anytime, or come visit me at Saxy. I'm in room 164. I would be happy to talk with you. And if you ever need anything, and if I have any teachers out there who need like tutorials, hit me up. I have tons.